Welcome, the new video. In this recap, a tiny creature named Ali accidentally starts a war between his people and giant killer birds. And now the entire valley is starving. But when he discovers a magical glowing sprout that transforms him into the very monster he fears, Ali is forced into a deadly adventure filled with fire wolves, giant beasts, and ancient legends. To save everyone, he must become the hero no one expected. In a vast forest teeming with predatory javans, Ali tries to sneak through the area, using a dry leaf to conceal his body. After walking a few meters into the bird's territory, the creature begins searching for food that has been dropped by the animals, but before he can find anything worthwhile, he is spotted by one of the birds. Enraged, the predator tries to crush the small animal with its talons, and during this chase, Ali remembers the time and who used to live in that region, along with others of his kind. The pup had always been very curious to explore and discover new things, and thanks to that, he was even able to put together some makeshift diving gear. So now that he has a chance to explore the river's waters, Ali swims peacefully and interacts with countless animals. Soon after, the pup comes face to face with a gigantic fish, and before he can play with it, the little one is saved by his father, who takes him back home. At that moment, it is revealed that this animal species is called puku, and now that the pup is safe, his relatives begin to scold him for wandering off alone. During the conversation, Kalyu decides they should tell him about the region's main legend, so the pup will have more reasons to be careful. So, the grandmother tells the story of how, long ago, an evil wolf appeared and began eliminating all the animals, ushering in an era of panic. At that time, giants appeared in that valley, gifting the animals with a magical, glowing sprout. Thanks to this, the species gained the ability to transform into other creatures, allowing them to form a powerful alliance. Furious at having lost control of the valley, the evil wolf stole the magical item from the animals, and this gave his body the ability to create flames. With his new abilities, the villain destroyed some of the giants who had helped the animals and caused a landslide to drive the rest of them out of the region, forcing his prey to return to their lives filled with fear. Despite this sinister story, Ali doesn't seem to have been scared, and the family decides to take a stroll through the Pukus' village while explaining to the pup about the festival that's taking place. Thanks to the bountiful harvest they've reaped, the Pukus have decided to celebrate, and during the party, Ali spots a bird flying over the area. Curious, the pup goes to investigate what the animal is doing, and as soon as he goes deeper into the forest, he comes across a flower moving on its own. As he gets a little closer, Ali is surprised by the Javan bird, and realizing that the bird is just another young one, he decides to teach her how to crack open the nuts from the trees in the valley. The problem is that this makes the bird very agitated, and when he finds his son again, Kalyu is worried about what he has just done. At that moment, the chick begins to cry out, causing dozens of adult birds to appear in the sky. Quickly, Kalyu runs to hide with his son, and the pair watches as the birds discover they can eat the chestnuts. Wanting to stockpile as much food as possible, the birds begin grabbing every single chestnut and even steal from the Pukus' baskets. Realizing he has just caused the greatest famine his species is about to face, Ali is devastated, and his thoughts return to the present moment, where he narrowly escapes the attacks of the furious bird. Without wasting any time, he runs back to his den, where he finds his parents talking with the remaining members of the Puku flock. Upon hearing Kalyu explain that they will end up losing their lives if they don't find more nuts before winter, Ali becomes even sadder and goes to his room, where he throws his diving mask far away. The problem is that this causes the mosque's glass to shatter, and realizing that the shards are producing a kind of reflection in the light, the Puku realizes that this is what scared off the bird that attacked him. So, Ali takes the shards of glass to the top of the valley and manages to use the light reflections to scare the birds away. However, little Puku ends up being surprised by one of the birds, which hits him squarely, causing him to fall into a hole full of spider webs. Right after that, Ali comes face to face with nothing less than a magical sprout of light right below his head, and realizes that the legend his family told him was real. As much as he doesn't want to mess with that kind of magical plant, the animal ends up falling right on top of the sprout and swallows it. Thanks to this, Ali's body is transformed into a Javam, and when he emerges from the hole to reunite with his family, everyone panics. However, his mother recognizes that voice, and concluding that the bird must have swallowed her son, she returns to the other Pukus, who begin to gather to attack Ali. With no way out, the fake bird walks backward and ends up falling off the cliff, causing him to wake up the next day. As he gets up, Ali finds himself surrounded by some deer, and when they are startled by the bird's presence, the animals flee in panic. Soon after, The bird is surprised by a trio of Javam sisters, who believe they have managed to rescue him from an ambush set by the Pukus. However, Ollie doesn't believe the trio and orders them to leave. But Ivy explains that she rescued him from the other side of the river and brought him to a place where they could care for him, since they are near the Javan's mountain. Upon hearing this, Ollie becomes even more upset and tries to figure out why he can understand the language of those birds. In the midst of the chaotic discussion, the group hears the howl of the evil wolf approaching the area, and realizing that the newcomer cannot fly, Ivy decides to smear other animals' droppings over his body to mask his scent. Soon after, the trio of sisters leaves, and Ollie hides in the bushes while the ferocious wolf roams the area in search of new prey. Sometime later, the fake bird goes to the lake to wash himself, when he is surprised by Boogle, the same fish he met when he was a pup. While listening to Ollie recount everything he's been through, the fish recognizes the sprout of light he's describing and reveals that a plant identical to it seems to have appeared in that region. Without wasting any time, the bird sets out in search of the sprout and is found by Ivy, who tries to understand why he wants that plant so badly. Wanting to resolve his situation, Ollie explains that he wants to become a Puku again, and to help him, Javam decides to find the sprout for a friend. However, this causes the bird to transform into a Puku, and realizing that her appearance has changed, she falls into despair. Because of this, the pair begins to argue furiously, accusing each other of having ruined their lives, and in the midst of the confrontation, Ivy realizes that Ollie is the same animal that scared her flock off the mountaintop. At that moment, Ollie has the idea to ask the giant fish for help once again, and he reveals that in order to find more sprouts of light, they must investigate the bodies of the 4 colossal creatures that were eliminated by the evil wolf in the past. So, Boogle tells them that the next closest sprout is at the great waterfall in the valley, but before he can warn them of something very important, the fish notices that they have already left. Far from that area, Ivy and Ollie begin their search, but suddenly, they come across a wolf pup and hide, frightened. However, before they can think of a way to escape, the pair is found by a trio of adult wolves, setting off an intense chase. In a panic, Ivy yells for Ollie to take flight, but the bird has no idea how to do that and is forced to run as fast as he can. During their escape, the pair comes across the entrance to a dark cave and decides to run inside, causing the wolves to give up the chase. This behavior confuses the animals, and wanting to understand why the predators are standing at the cave's entrance, Ollie surveys the surrounding area. Thanks to this, the bird realizes they are in a cave full of root snakes, and so they can escape that place alive. He teaches Ivy to use her sharp Puku's sense of smell, allowing them to reach the other side of the cave. The problem is that the wolves have a new idea for how to catch them, and they howl to wake the snakes, forcing the pair to escape along the path surrounded by predators. With no other choice, they end up falling off the cliff, and in desperation, Ivy screams for Ollie to use his wings to fly. At the last second, the bird manages to take flight, and upon realizing he is finally soaring through the skies, Ollie is overjoyed. At the end of the day, they decide to stop and rest a bit, and continue their search the next day. As they talk about the hunger the animals of the valley began to suffer after the giants were driven out, Ivy reveals that she lost her parents during that time, and was only able to save her people after receiving help from a Puku pup. Upon hearing this, Ollie asks what she's talking about, and Ivy replies that when she was little, she received help from a Puku to learn how to crack open the nuts, allowing her species to survive the Great Famine. Realizing that her friend is the same bird from a few years ago, Ollie can't believe it and remains silent while her friend lies down to sleep. The next morning, the pair comes upon the great waterfall right in front of them and flies toward it, where they find the giant's body. The problem is that the place is being used as a den by wolves, and while they were thinking of a way to get in, they run into Boogle, who has come to help them. The fish explains that he's never had any friends to live with him in those waters, and asks the pair to find a spark of light for him too, so that he could transform and live alongside them when all this is over. Excited by the idea, the animals agree, and Boogle pretends to have had an accident out of the water, so that the wolves will try to capture him. Taking advantage of the distraction, the pair rushes to grab the sprout of light from the predator's den, but upon seeing that they have only one, Ivy says she needs to eat it, so she can become a Javam again and fly alongside her friend to help with the search. The problem is that Ollie doesn't trust her, and he steps in front of Puku, revealing at the same time that he was the pup who taught her about the chestnuts in the past. This revelation leaves Ivy speechless, and Ollie states that his people depend on him, because if he can't find a way to recover the food from the valley, his species will go extinct. Furthermore, the bird explains that ever since the Javans appeared in their territory, the Pukus have suffered more and more, and his father can't even look him in the eye anymore. During that discussion, the pair is surprised by the wolves once again, and in desperation, they start shouting for Boogle, asking him to help them. However, Ivy and Ollie end up falling right onto the sprout of light, causing both of them to be transformed into fish and fall into the water. At that moment, Ivy realizes that the magical plant's transformation can be controlled, and all they need to do is say the name of the animal they want to be before touching it. Despite this, Ollie remains furious and claims that thanks to Ivy, he's even further from returning home and saving his species. So, the fake fish continues on his way with Boogle, who begins to lead him to the next area where they can find more sprouts. Along the way, Boogle notices that they are being followed by Ivy and asks Ollie to try to make amends with her, since in their current situation, being alone is the worst thing of all. So, the pair talks again about the time they met when they were young, and they realize that despite the problems they caused, both did everything out of kindness, so they shouldn't blame themselves for it. At that moment, the group reaches yet another waterfall, where they come across a large number of shoots at the top. Quickly, the fish gather in a formation resembling a giant fish, so they can use their fins together and fight against the current. The problem is that halfway there, the trio is surprised by a group of stone bears, who try to devour them. In a panic, the fish dodge the attacks, and Boogle joins them to make a powerful leap toward the top of the waterfall. However, halfway there, the trio spots the wolf pack emerging at the top, and while barking at its prey, the wolf pup slips. Desperate, the parents rush to try to rescue him, and realizing that the pup will end up falling into the stone bear's territory, Ollie asks his friends to hold him. Quickly, the fish leaps to stop the pup from falling, and the pup is rescued by his parents. Realizing the bravery of those animals, the wolf decides to simply leave. Thanks to this, the trio manages to reach the saplings, and excited, Ivy and Ollie return to their original forms and celebrate that they've finally managed to get back to normal. Soon after, Boogle approaches the sprouts, and the pair asks him what he wants to become. At that moment, the giant fish takes his friends by surprise and says he wants to become none other than the firewolf. This causes Boogle to transform into the valley's great villain, and he uses his paws to create a flame that spreads across his entire body. It is then revealed that all this time, the evil predator had been imprisoned by the sprout of one of the valley's giants, who turned him into a fish to live alone in the lake. After so many years of waiting, the fire wolf managed to manipulate a naive duo into helping him reach one of the saplings, and explains that he did all of this to take revenge on the animals of the valley, since he was abandoned by his own family when he was still a pup. Realizing that the villain won't stop until he's taken revenge on everyone, Ivy tries to fly toward the sprouts, but is quickly defeated by the predator, leaving her unconscious. While Ollie tries to help his friend, the fire wolf burns the handful of light sprouts and leaves, abandoning the pair at the top of the waterfall. Noticing that his friend is still alive, Ollie says he won't leave her there, and after building a makeshift stretcher, he sets off toward the Javan's territory. Despite the extreme difficulties he faces along the way, the Puku doesn't give up and climbs the entire mountain, reaching the birds' territory, who are impressed to find such a small animal carrying one of their own. After all this effort, Ollie ends up passing out and wakes up some time later in one of the burrows, where he receives the news that Ivy is gone. Upon hearing this, the Puku begins to cry and hugs his friend's feathers, and she starts laughing right behind him. Confused, Ollie asks what the bird meant, and Ivy explains that she had gone out to find food for them. Realizing that his friend is okay, the Puku hugs her, and the pair walks through the Javanese village, where they notice that a large cloud of ash has begun to cover the skies. Realizing that the animals in the valley are in danger, Ivy says they need to help them deal with all of this, and receives the support of her sisters, leading them to convince the entire flock. So, the Javans set out to rescue the animals from the forest fire and gather with everyone at the riverbank, where they are surprised by the wolf pack. The leader of the wolves then thanks the pair for saving his pup and says they can help with the river crossing. Quickly, the group members knock some tree trunks into the water and help the animals climb up to safely cross to the other side. As soon as they arrive in the Great Valley of the Pukus, Ollie is reunited with his family, who are thrilled to know he is safe. However, at that moment, the wolf pup begins to lose his strength while swimming. Quickly, Ivy and Ollie come together to rescue the little one, and the Puku explains to his father that to defeat the reign of the fire wolf, they must work together, since that way they will be much more powerful. Realizing that his son is right, Kalyu helps the little wolf recover, and as they walk out of the water, the animals come face to face with the great flaming villain on the other side of the lake. Without wasting any time, Ollie tells everyone to get out of there and runs with Ivy toward the hole he had fallen into last time, while her friend searches for a new sprout of light. Ivy watches the fire wolf approaching across the lake and urges her friend to hurry. Upon reaching the center of the webs where he had fallen, Ollie communicates with the giant and begs him to try to produce one last spark of light, so that they may defeat the valley's greatest threat once and for all. After a few seconds, the Colossus's spirit manifests before the little one and strains to produce one last spark to help him in his war. Determined to change the fate of the innocent species, Ollie concentrates and says the word Dizo, the name of the giants who were expelled by the villain. As he does so, a great glow erupts from within the crater, and Ollie rises in the form of a mighty Dizo, who strides toward the fire wolf without a shred of fear. Quickly, Ivy joins her friend, and after flinging the flaming predator away, the Colossus of the valley pours a large amount of water over it, extinguishing its flames. Without wasting any time, the bird hurls the sprout at the wolf while saying Boogle's name to turn him back into a fish, but the villain ignites his fire once more, destroying the sprout. Soon after, the fire wolf climbs Ollie's body, setting the trees all around him ablaze. Because of this, Dizo is forced to retreat, and the villain claims he has nowhere to run, as he would sink if he entered the lake's water, since his body is too heavy. However, Ollie doesn't give up on his mission, and he controls some roots to trap the fire wolf's paws, while using his weight to make the dam begin to give way. Desperate, Ivy begs her friend not to do this, but Dizo asks her to trust him, and destroys the dam, causing the wolf to fall into the water and sink into the depths. As soon as he realizes the great villain has been defeated, Ollie knows his mission is complete, and looks toward his family one last time before falling toward the water. In a panic, Ivy screams for her friend, while the waters of the valley begin to flow once more throughout the region, for the dam created by the fire wolf no longer exists. No matter how much she cries out her friend's name and flies around searching for him, Ivy is unable to find him, and asks for forgiveness from Puku's parents, who are devastated by the loss. Sometime later, the entire valley region turns green again, and the animals once more have a safe place, now working in harmony. One day, while out gathering food, Ivy and the Puku's couple come across a group of giant figures approaching the valley, and they are overjoyed to see that the Dizos are returning to live among them. In addition to bringing new types of fruit for the animals, Ivy notices that one of the giants seems to be giving a ride to a small animal, which turns out to be Ollie. Upon reuniting with her friend, the bird flies toward him and hugs him joyfully, asking how he is still alive. Puku then explains that the Dizos used their shoots of light to bring him back to life, and without wasting any time, the pair sets off to meet his parents, who embrace him with relief, knowing that from now on, they'll be able to live as a family again. Subscribe for more recap videos.